chicken. I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph's has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be
No.
an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
But by the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
It was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph Jaffe and Corona TV.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? It never gets old. It never gets old. Welcome, everybody. It is Friday. Happy Friday. Friday. It is a good day to be alive, especially when you are on the bridge of the starship. This is what it is. This is what it is. We talk about enterprise selling and institutionalizing enterprise. Forget about all of that. You got to be on the enterprise to be truly alive. I am so happy to have my guest with me today. I'm going to tell you more about him. You're also going to notice some very interesting things about the show today. For example, why is my name yellow? Why is it yellow today? Why is the magenta now yellow, Bob? Yes, I also love seeing those happy faces. I love seeing my guests, past, present, and future. And, you know, I'm smiling at that intro when I see it because it just makes me feel so good to see smiles. It really is contagious. You know, we need to talk about the right kind of contagious things, not the wrong kinds of contagious things. Well, one thing that is contagious is the love that a parent has for their children. Today is National Daughters Day, National Daughters Day, and I have a daughter. She is in St. Louis at the moment. So Amber, I'm pretty sure you're not watching right now, and I'm pretty sure no one's going to tell you because you'd probably be embarrassed. But she's at WashU, and I just want to say that I love you very much and hope you are safe and sound and enjoying your sophomore year right now. So thinking of you today. I'm thinking of Bob as well, of Bob Liodice. Bob Liodice is the CEO of the ANA. He's the head honcho, but he doesn't act like the head honcho. He's the nicest guy you will ever meet. And I just love the 10 minutes we spent in the green room, in the virtual green room, just talking and reconnecting. And we'll do it again in front of you guys shortly. And I just want to say hello to a few of our regulars, Joey DeMont, and of course, Tom Morris. I love the intro as well. And I love making new edits of that as well. Okay, so let's do our birthdays today. There are a whole bunch of them. I want to say happy birthday to Philip Robertson, the Southampton fan. Unfortunately, my team, Tottenham, just whipped Southampton the other day, so I'm sorry about that. To Micah, Robin, Hilton, Terry, Lynn, happy birthday. And then, of course, to all of my LinkedIn connections. No matter where you are, and you're probably at home, you might be stuck at home, you might be stuck in general, but you will never be stuck when Corona TV has your back. So celebrate with us, and I'm celebrating you and celebrating in your honor today. Well, let's get to our seated soliloquy, and the seated soliloquy is called Live Long and Market, and you're definitely going to start picking up a bit of a common theme, but it is with good reason. But before I do that, I would be remiss if I didn't say hello to my most loyal fan. I have two, my mother and my mother-in-law, but hello, Ma. Glad you are watching in South Africa, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the show. So Live Long and Market, seated soliloquy. Let's do this. Live long and prosper is actually an abbreviated version of a traditional Jewish religious blessing. which became mainstream thanks to the Star Trek TV series, where it was used there by Mr. Spock, played by the late Leonard Nimoy, himself Jewish, as the greeting of the Vulcan people. Now, the phrase was actually the spoken greeting or blessing that accompanied the hand gesture called the Vulcan salute, right? The Vulcan salute. Live long and prosper is translated from the Vulcan phrase, Dif tor he smusma, which was first mentioned in Star Trek, the motion picture. The phrase echoes the Hebrew Shalom Aleichem and the Arabic Salam Aleikum, which roughly translates as peace be upon you. Nimoy borrowed the hand gesture from an ancient Jewish Kohanim or priests gesture. It was they themselves were descendants from Aaron, and it is still used today by Jews. The sign is a modification of the Hebrew letter Shin, S, right? Itself representing the big guy upstairs. And I'm actually not referring to my guest today, Bob Liodice, or maybe I am. As an aside, the lesser known response is peace and long life. And interestingly enough, when someone passes away in South Africa, our custom is to say, we wish you long life. So you can see the circle of life is present. Now, from first contact to the Prime Directive, to the Borg and their quest for assimilation, Star Trek has been teaching us about the importance of diversity, inclusivity, tolerance, and humility. But it doesn't stop there. Star Trek gives us lessons about organizational structure and dynamics, team building and talent, leadership, and to my delight, innovation, experimentation, and risk-taking. Boldly going where no man or woman has gone before is what keeps us alive, and ultimately what will keep us alive during times of tremendous change, flux, volatility, and adversity. Going back to the Prime Directive for just a moment, which prohibits its members from interfering with the internal and natural development of alien civilizations, I've been using a bit of creative license and using it to describe what I believe is an imperative for businesses and brands today: growth. The Prime Directive is growth, or rather, I should say, a return to growth. Well, there's only one more thing left to say, and that is, make it so, number one, engage. Well, I don't think I am number one today when it comes to my guest. I think probably I'm number two, but I'm very happy to be his number one. I'm talking, of course, about Bob Liodice. Bob Liodice is the CEO of the ANA. He previously served as Executive Vice President responsible for member relations and business development, with a primary focus on strengthening relationships with ANA member companies and broadening the membership base. And has he ever done that? Bob joined the ANA as Senior Vice President in 1995. But before the ANA, he was Vice President of Global Marketing and Sales for Grupo Televisa. I actually didn't know that, and I remember doing a bunch of keynotes for them in Mexico City. Televisa is a major worldwide broadcaster. His previous experience includes more than 15 years in marketing and financial management at Kraft General Foods, and tenure as category marketing manager for Jell-O and Baker's brands. He's a member of the boards of directors of the Advertising Council, Advertising Research Foundation, Advertising Self-Regulatory Council, Geopath, Advertising Educational Foundation, Digital Advertising Alliance, Trustworthy Accountability Group, and the World Federation of Advertisers. The Federation. We had to get back to Star Trek. Bob holds bachelor's degrees in accounting and management and an MBA in finance from New York University. But enough about his bio. Let's meet the man himself. Bob, welcome to the show.
Live long and prosper, my friend.
Exactly. Peace be with you.
Thank you for that. That was a generous introduction, and it's so good to be with you, my dear friend.
So you look good. By the way, this is a weird thing that I say to people now is I look at their picture, their sound quality, and their video quality, and your video quality is superb. So whatever setup, whoever helped you set up, or maybe you set yourself up, you look great.
Thank you so much. First of all, I think we should all feel good. as much as Corona has affected you with Corona TV, it has also affected us in some ways very negatively. But the reality is the optimism that you expressed in your introductory remarks are really what this is all about. If our punishment in life is to serve in these prisons of our home offices, then you know what? That's not so bad in the scheme of things. The reality is the optimism you expressed throughout your opening remarks is exactly what we should embrace and feel absolutely terrific about, because life is in fact good. Challenging times to say the least, but we've had many, many challenging times before, and this is just a test to see how we navigate our way through the space and time continuum, and see how we come out on the other side of the wormhole.
Nice. I love anytime metaphors can be extended and sustained. I am a happy man indeed. And look, one of the things that is so difficult right now is that, almost like, and we'll talk a lot about marketing obviously today, but there's kind of a microcosm and a macrocosm, right? Like on one level with marketing and marketers, they just when they thought they figured out something else comes along, right? Digital, and then social comes along, and then the whole mobile app ecosystem comes along, and then just when they thought they figured that out, Snapchat comes along, and then TikTok comes along, and programmatic and native, and it just seems that it's and it's kind of difficult to be static as a marketer and feel that sense of comfort because it just things keep on changing. And I think maybe if you become a master of, not a master of marketing, but if you become a master of change, and you just say, we cannot control this, we can just roll with it or ride it and submit to it as opposed to try and beat it, it becomes quite assuring and reassuring. I think the challenge with COVID now is that we're not sure what the end product looks like. We're not sure when we come out of it and what comes next. And so if there's one thing that we suck at as human beings, it's the unknown and uncertainty.
Joe, that is absolutely true. But if you think about the past 15 to 20 years, that's all that this has been about, is continuous change and evolution and innovation and creativity. And that's the vibrancy of what this is all about. That's what's made our industry so exciting. But think of the transformation it's had on just life. I think about the way that we buy things online. Think about the way we communicate. I remember that when the iPhone was introduced, I think it was 2007, it was one of the most revolutionary things that took place. And so life is just about tremendous changes and our ability to adapt it. I always remember that old saying, change or die. And I think that most of us are decided to make those changes. But the difference is the attitude that we bring forward to it. If it's about change because we have no other alternatives, then that's not necessarily fun. But I think I learned a long time ago from Bill Gates that it's about curiosity. It's about those kinds of things that we've never experienced before, or don't do the way we used to do them. And how we adapt to that specific change is, I think, a testament to our character and our willingness to enjoy life to the fullest that we can. And I think that's the spirit by what this program is all about. I mean, this is an evolution that you essentially created out of unusual circumstances to say.
Yeah.
And my God, if anybody's enjoying this experience, I mean, it's you with the 120 episodes that you've already done of this so far. So kudos to you. You've certainly changed, to say the least.
Well, thank you. And I feel changed. And the beautiful thing about it is, so just to take a little step back, in doing a little bit of research, a teensy-weensy bit of research for the soliloquy, I decided to research what Star Trek could teach us about life and about business if we didn't know it already. And one of the things that's amazing is that, the captain sits in the middle of the bridge, in the middle. He's surrounded by his team, his family. He recognizes, or she, that they are nothing without their team, without their family, without their colleagues. And so, as we go through challenges, recognizing what is leadership, what makes a great leader, Star Trek reminds us that great leaders have done well if they surround themselves with people that are not yes men or yes women, that are part of a, and I will use the word collective because we don't want to use them in Borgian ways. But I am nothing without my community, without the community, without the community that keeps me. Just like you and I, we're nothing without our family, our friends, our colleagues, our partners. And I think that gives me solace and it gives me just joy. The key word for me throughout this, Bob, has just been joy, joy, joy. Approach everything, no matter how hard, no matter how challenging, no matter how uncertain, with joy. And that's what keeps your head up and keeps you moving forward.
Well, I just want to build on that because there are too many people I've met in life that their middle name is whine. They whine about everything. And, I often say to those people that if the man from Mars came down on Earth and saw your life and said, my goodness, if this is the way Earth people live, then in fact, this is a pretty damn good place to live. And often we don't realize how good we have it. We have it tremendously good. Now, there are those that suffer. I don't want to sound Pollyanna-ish and think that, everything is just going along swimmingly. People have health issues, people have economic issues. In fact, one of the key findings that came out of our studies early this year when COVID first broke out was that the level of anxiety among consumers is dramatically high. And thinking about bringing home your kids and having to homeschool them and having to be able to navigate day-to-day activities where both your spouse and you are also working off of maybe limited Wi-Fi sets and trying to keep everybody contained. Those are certainly challenges. But it doesn't mean that we need to be unhappy, that we feel desolate or downtrodden. There are many, many good things in life that we just take for granted. One of the most refreshing memories that I have was post 9/11, because it was at a time when I think we all appreciated each other so much more. We embraced each other. It was a time where we celebrated each other and recognized how treasured life was and how the times are that your neighbor is somebody to be valued, not to be dismissed. So there are so many of these things that are philosophically sometimes challenging, but I think also uplifting. And going back to your Star Trek metaphor, I think that was a vision of a Gene Roddenberry from the beginning, where he overcame the stereotypes of racial inequality, but also embraced technology and forward thinking to have a better place. And look what it spawned over the couple of decades of its existence and many, many spin-offs. There is much to be grateful for, much to be thankful for, and I think you're a living embodiment of that.
Well, thank you for saying that. But, today is all about you, Bob. And so it is important for us to get to understand the real Bob Liodice. We all see this man that is so well put together, that is, you're like the James Bond of our industry. Roger Moore for me, because I was a Roger Moore guy. So let's find out a little bit about the real Bob. So first of all, it turns out, and this is what we have found out about you, through our, Corona TV's 50 full-time researchers, that you are a huge Beatles fan. Yeah. And there you are at the bottom. We unearthed this from the archives. So, when I ask people to tell me some things about them, I'm always intrigued, not really the what they chose, but the why they chose it. So tell me about why you're a huge Beatles fan.
Sure. I recall back in late 1963, early 1964, my brother brought home the Meet the Beatles album, which was their first album, at least that was released in the US. And I was about 8 or 9 at that time, and I must have dug a hole in that record. I played it so many times. And if you recall, at that stage, we had just escaped the period of time that John Kennedy was assassinated. And there was a dour mood in the US, late 1963. And the Beatles came along, and when they landed in New York on February 7th, 1964, there just seemed to be an energy and uplifting. And I got swept up in it, to say the least. I gravitated to their music, to the energy, to the seemingly optimistic tone of their music, not realizing at the stage, I mean, they were just essentially brand new on the scene, about how good they could become. And what happened over the course of time was the incredible metamorphosis that we've been talking about, change, that they brought to music. And of the Beatles, I was a big John Lennon fan, and he always seemed to demonstrate the level of leadership, which you acknowledged before, to be able to push the band to do different things. And while he and McCartney collaborated on so many great tunes, it was their powerful combination that seemed to bring the evolution of music during the 60s as one of the greatest changes in music over the course of time. And I grew with it. I grew from it. I kind of aligned with them, and I still do. I have Beatles channel on my Sirius car radio, and I just listen to it endlessly. I could listen to the same thing over and over again. But it was their ability to grow and to learn, and to feel free to experiment, to take chances, to push the envelope. And they almost always succeeded. Not always, but they succeeded enough that I just embraced what they were about, and I still carry it to this day.
I see an opening remarks / keynote at an upcoming ANA conference where you're going to say, everything I learned to succeed in business and marketing, I learned from the Beatles. But you said a beautiful phrase there, Bob, which was, you said, I grew with it and I grew from it.
Right.
And you know, it's not a coincidence now when we think about the whole theme, right, of Masters of Marketing over the last several years has been this idea of a force for growth. And we'll talk obviously later about a force for good and a force for growth.
Right.
So this idea of growth, you know, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about it now as well, because you can grow out in a bad way, right? COVID, putting on weight during COVID. Right. You can also grow up. Growing up is maturity. Growing up is opportunity costs, sacrifices, self-sacrifice. And I love the way that you said, I grew with it. You moved with it, almost like DNA strands, and you grew from it. It's just a very rich way. I think brands and corporations, if they thought about their growth instead of profitability and market share and all these KPIs, they should be thinking about some maybe softer metrics as well. How are you growing with COVID? How are you growing from COVID? Black Lives Matter. How are you changing in terms of who you are and how you live and the role that you play in life, in society, in markets by and large? And that all just comes from you just saying that you like the Beatles.
Well, it does, but you know, it also is a representation that fundamentals do matter. And I'll just give you a bit of a background on how a force for good and a force for growth came about. It was in 2016 that I was preparing for a digital and social media conference, and I usually do the opening remarks at our conferences. And I was in a Sunday, I was in my office, and I was thinking about the context of what this conference was going to be about. And, you know, we were swept up in the evolution of digital and social, and obviously they were exciting times. And as I sat there, a thought came upon me, which was, is any of this stuff really working? And so one would naturally say, of course it works. But that wasn't satisfactory enough. So I'll keep a long story short. I started to go back to fundamentals, and I started to trace back the level of industry growth in retail, in sales, and in profitability. And I found out that, which I said on the stage at that time, growth sucks. And the more I started to dig, the more I started to realize that, in fact, even though that we were changing and evolving the way we conduct media, we weren't growing, or we were growing insufficiently. And that was a bellwether for me to recognize that the foundation of business growth needs to be appreciated by everybody in an organization, because that's what shareholders are looking for. The force for good came about because of Mark Pritchett. And Mark was a foundational believer in society and sustainability, in equality and inclusion. And, the more we spoke, he began to evolve this philosophy that we need to be a force for good and a force for growth. And thereby came essentially our mission and our essentially practical application of what is the theme for the Masters this year.
Well, I'll tell you, yesterday I had Kuda Biza on my show. He's co-founder of a mission-based cookie company called Nunbelievable. It's an amazing story. And he gave me this fact, which actually blew me away. He said by the end of this year, 12,000 people per day could die from hunger linked to COVID. Wow. And I said to him, this is the first time that we've taken something like poverty and hunger and now linked it to and compounded it with and by COVID. And so this idea of a force for good, this opportunity for companies and brands to stand up and step up and lead by example internally, right, with respect to diversity, inclusivity, externally, right, in terms of community. This isn't just a line item on a corporate social responsibility, flow chart. This has got to be a mission, and it's got to be a prime directive.
Yeah, if it's not endemic to you and your organization, then it can't be artificial. Consumers, especially young people today, see right through that. And I think that what COVID has done is given us all a collective head slap that says, wake up. There is a lot more out there than just your respective commercial interests. It's about the people that you serve, and things that many, even in our industry, have taken for granted, such as privacy. I mean, think how long it's taken us to figure out what to do with privacy and how to be able to deal with people's legitimate interest. And we still don't have it all figured out, by no means, but the attention that we're paying to things such as that, to the well-being of people that have suffered through rounds of unemployment and poverty, and who have felt neglected, which has spurred this current round of racial injustice reactions. They're all legitimate, and we all need to make sure that we have that head slap and put it to good purpose to recognize that there is a wider set of needs that society and industry need to collaborate on in order to be able to improve the welfare of everyone. And you know what? When one succeeds, somebody else succeeds, and it's that wonderful cycle upwards that feeds on itself and creates the overarching growth that just becomes endemic to the way we live.
So part of the way that I've built Corona TV is that because our lives are kind of manic depressive now these days, highs and lows, and sometimes in one Zoom. So now we're going to pull it back a little bit and go back to another fun fact about you, which I think is going to maybe help people understand why this common theme, because it turns out that you, Bob, are a Trekkie. And what I didn't know about you, see, I've learned all these things, is that there you are as number one at a Trekkie convention. So tell me about this love for Star Trek.
Oh, that's yeah. I walked right into that one, and I'm glad you embraced it. It's interesting. I actually was not a watcher of the original series when I think it debuted in '66. I only started to watch it through the reruns, and it happened to be caught up again. When you think about the times, this is a time for space exploration. Think about our Apollo missions to the moon. And so there was this this fun affection for astronomy and what's out there. And it kind of combined with almost religious experiences of really, how does this whole thing work? Why are we here, etc. And it took me and just kind of pulled me in the direction of, exploring in my own mind about how this all works and why is this all happening in this way. And through the original series, you could see the possibilities that were out there and the legitimate extensions of the way things are. I mean, if you think about back in 1966, most of the control panels in the Starship Enterprise were not push button, but, essentially touch screens. Well, and think about, Apple coming out with the touch screen in 2007. I mean, so many things in Star Trek were ahead of their time because they helped push the possibilities of the way things are, and helped at least me realize that the possibilities were endless, and we should all kind of live our lives to that next innovation and ambition and have the courage to go where you've never gone before, so to speak.
I love it. I love it.
It became a lot, and we went from there.
And I love it because the Beatles and Star Trek are, we may as well be talking about, and as we are, right, inclusivity and diversity and experimentation and interconnectedness. And I think there's something really beautiful, which I'm going to come back to in a moment, this concept of where does marketing fit in? Mm-hmm. From an, is it the coils and the warp drive, like how, in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move things around a little bit. I'm going to play a little game with you, what I play with all my guests, which is guess the quote. Okay. And so who said this? I think you're going to guess this one. Right. There are only two things in a business that make money: innovation and marketing. Everything else is cost.
I believe that's Peter Drucker, if I'm not mistaken.
You certainly are not mistaken. I knew you would get that one because, but I love it because, here we are thinking or being told that marketing is a cost, is an expense. Right. And Drucker, our Q, I don't know what he is to us, but Drucker, Drucker basically, said, Regis McKenna, right, said marketing is everything. That if we can almost reintroduce marketing, elevate, champion, celebrate marketing as being this life force of business, that is how we survive and thrive, and that is how we move forward.
I would agree. If you think about how many innovations never made it because they were not marketed properly, that consumers or customers were never made aware of it. Maybe Drucker kind of pushed the envelope on the metaphor a bit, but nonetheless, there's a lot of truth to that. And I think, unfortunately, we've buried ourselves as an industry because, at least when I grew up in marketing, it was always one of the least accountable functions within a business enterprise. We did not measure well. We did not necessarily understand what those returns on investment were. And as such, CFOs and others in corporations made fun of us and essentially said that we were unaccountable and that we were just guessing at how to be able to succeed. And so we didn't do ourselves any favors in the past. And I think that is reflective of some of the changes that are now taking place with an increased focus on data, technology, measurement, accountability, and those things which in fact bring the science together with the art to ensure that marketing is a critical force in any particular enterprise.
So I'm going to ask you to talk about, because I love your growth agenda. But before I do, one of my favorite parts of the whole year is when you stand up and kick the Masters of Marketing conference off, because you're a master at that. There's the lambasting fire and brimstone. You call it like you see it, and then you bring everybody back from the edge and the brink and build an entire suite of content around a way forward. But my question to you is, how are we doing? Maybe this is a little sneak peek if you feel comfortable. What is the state? What is the state of marketing right now? What is the state of our marketing union?
It's a mixed bag, I think. It's obviously right now, because of COVID, it's in a state of disarray. We're all hurting. We're all taking pay cuts and cutting staff and cutting marketing and media budgets, and everybody is scrambling. So right now, obviously, it is not a pretty environment, to say the least. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to recognize that there is this degree of uncertainty in front of us. You alluded to it earlier in your comments. And when you have that level of uncertainty, you're not necessarily sure how to navigate. Our sensors are not necessarily working as well as they should. And so it's very difficult to craft a strategy and meaningful tactics in figuring out how to navigate the terrain, because the terrain is uneven. It's bumpy. In many cases, we may have been dropped in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and we don't know which way to turn. So I think right now we're in a bit of a confused state. And the longer that the COVID issue drags on, the more uncertain we will be. And unfortunately, that could lead to some unfortunate consequences. And I think we've got to be realistic to that. But we can do ourselves a lot of favors by doing what I mentioned before, which was returning to the fundamentals, and to ensure that we find the right navigation tools to be able to make our choices. In fact, when I started my career in finance and moved over to marketing, and one of my mentors it was Peter Dolan, who was the former chairman and CEO of Bristol Myers Squibb, who was then working at General Foods and in a marketing function, and he was kind of my internal hero. And he gave me my advice about marketing, and he said, marketing is nothing more than common sense. If it makes sense here and here, he says, that's a winning strategy. But in figuring that out, you've got to sift your way through the 1,000 options and pick one or two that make absolutely sense to you to be able to pursue. And then you've got to marry that up with the accountability side of it, so that in the end, marketing is about making decisions and making the most productive decisions. Because if you do have 1,000 options, you have to decide where you want to allocate those resources. You have to decide which of your staff are going to be devoted to a specific project or initiative. You're going to have to decide what agencies to use for what part of your media mix. You're going to have to decide which technology players are going to make the most sense for you. And in that regard, we have to be leaders that you've talked about, because we have to be at the forefront of effective decision making. And if we have nothing to guide us, then we are going to flail and then fail. And that would be unfortunate. And candidly, that's part of the reason I think the CMO turnover in our industry is as high as it is, because we don't always have the necessary guardrails to be able to make the optimum choices and deliver the growth that CEOs and shareholders are essentially looking for us. And so it's more than an acquired taste. It's a learning of how to be able to balance those arts and sciences together, which is the reason we created the growth agenda. And the growth agenda is truly about, thank you for bringing that up. And if you look at this, you see that on the outer ring, there are 4 broad strategic priorities called brand experience, creativity and media, data technology and measurement, talent and marketing organization, and society and sustainability. And the inner ring are 12 strategic platforms. And after I had my aha moment in 2016, when I said that growth was missing, or growth was needing activation, I started to think about how we in the marketing community talk about marketing. And we could have 600 different conversations simultaneously. So we created that circle as a way to capture and organize the conversation in an intelligent way that captured most of what it is that we should be thinking about or doing in order to be able to provide guidance to our people and to our partners about what becomes most important for us. And in that process of organizing our thinking, we can make better choices to be able to drive business and brand growth.
And what I love about it, of course, is it is a total holistic solution that I think incorporates almost just like those beautiful colors of all the different people, not just their skin color, but also their jersey or their sweater color on the bridge. It is a kaleidoscope or a rainbow. It is a beautiful painter's palette of every base that has been covered, and you do cover it. And I was just looking at some of the comments as well. Tom Dearline is here, and he spoke about measurement and accountability, but also, of course, creative and message and results. And you see that in this beautiful wheel, in this growth wheel.
Yeah, and it took a long time to kind of figure this out, and consultation with a lot of people as we evolved it, and it went through many iterations. Our design team at the ANA were really upset with me at every time they thought we had it, we evolved it and changed it again. And I'm sure over the course of time it will change. But to your point, the concept is not what are the little tweaks that are there, but how do we immerse ourselves into all of those things, which do embrace being a force for good and a force for growth, because all of those things do influence whether you can be forceful in achieving good and forceful in achieving growth. And this is about making choices. And the beauty of marketing, as I said before, is that there are different options. And what's good for you may not be good for me, and vice versa. That's the reason why at the ANA, we don't necessarily or want to talk about best practices. We want to talk about our insights in all 12 of those internal spokes, because we all need to understand what works and what doesn't work, and how those lessons in how different masters pursue those things, how they in fact translate them back to their own respective corporations. They are insights. They are not best in class, because what's best for you is not best for me. So how we make those choices to drive growth and do so in a way that is creative, that is accountable, that is good to consumers and customers, it's as complex and as simple as that.
I love that. And, there's obviously me being a writer, and I like to be a bit self-deprecating at the best of times. So I always could say that I'm a member of the Secret Consultants Guild, and if we don't come up with at least one acronym every quarter, we get thrown out. And there's secret handshakes as well. Who knows what they might be. But when I think about, people say there's best practices or there's next practices or new practices, and I think I love the fact that you're pushing off against all practices, and you're saying let's begin with insights. And then I think there's a second part of that as well, which is how do we share? How do we actually become more generous and recognize that if I can help, it's almost a rethink on competition, which is we can be the worst of enemies. Quite frankly, just look at it. As I was speaking about it the other day, Antonin Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they were the best of friends off the court and arch enemies on the court. And we have to think about how do we help one another and be more generous with those, and not hoard the insights and maybe something that's worked. Because as you said, right, what works for me today may not work for me tomorrow. And I might need your insight to help me tomorrow. And if I share mine with you today, maybe we can actually help each other.
Well, there are two things that to pivot off for what you just said. One of the 12 spokes on the wheel is about trust and transparency. And transparency goes to that notion of sharing. It's at roughly 9 o'clock. Just go down.
There we go.
Right there. And if you don't share, and you don't share data, you don't share information, the ability to make the most optimum choices for yourself or for your partners becomes limited. And I think that this is where the concept of data transparency in particular becomes even more foundational, because those are the golden nuggets that will allow us to optimize and unleash the creativity and innovation and better brand choice making for us to succeed. And that is even foundational for preparing for the future, which is in the kind of the 1 o'clock part of the growth agenda. It's not only looking at your current facts and your current insights, but what is coming down the road, so that we can be anticipatory, to be able to understand how artificial intelligence or blockchain or the Internet of Things, or what is out there in the future, that we need to start planting the seeds now to become increasingly capable in what we may need to be doing in order to be able to optimize both our short-term as well as our long-term growth. So there's a lot of intriguing stories that are built in with all of those 12 different platforms.
Well, let's segue to the granddaddy of them all, which is the Masters of Marketing conference, because you are walking your talk. This event is, rivals probably only Salesforce's event as far as I'm concerned. In fact, let me restate that. Salesforce is number 2, ANA is number 1. This event is the must-attend event for any marketer or anyone trying to court a marketer. And of course, it's not happening this year in Orlando like it happened last year. You've had to pivot. You've had to invent and reinvent. Talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing, steps you've taken, and then I think this might be a good opportunity for us to announce something.
Well, sure. Let's step back a second. And COVID had a profound impact on ANA because we are a face-to-face organization. We do over 800 events per year, whether they're conferences, training events, webinars, the committee meetings, etc. So if any organization had to learn how to figure out what their future was going to be about, we had to do that. And I congratulate our team for diving in headlong in the face of tremendous headwinds to figure out how to be able to pivot and how to be able to conduct those 800 or so events that we do. The Masters, again, we were hamstrung by the concept of, are we going live face-to-face or are we going to be virtual? Because remember, COVID happened in March. This is in October, and no one really knew. Again, the uncertainty was killing us as to where we were going to be and how we were going to conduct it. Fortunately, we found out in enough time that there was no way we were going to go to Florida, and that pushed us into an all virtual mode. The Masters this year is going to be no different than any other year, other than it being transmitted virtually. And the reason is that the foundation of the Masters was about results. You think about all the various conferences and gatherings and meetings, nobody talks about results and how you got there. And the theme behind the Masters, or the way we approach it, is real simple. It's put up the leaders of our industry, the CMOs, the senior leadership, to discuss how they've achieved success and to identify in roughly a half hour or so what they did, the decisions they made, the choices that led them to the fanfare that they're currently experiencing, and let the audience hear so that they understand what made them successful and whether their lessons are right for them. And so this year, we essentially bringing 24 of the leading CMOs together to be able to identify what those nuggets are. And so no different in that regard.
Well, last year I had the absolute pleasure of giving one of the second stage keynotes, and it was, it was funny. It was a highlight for me. It was highlights of my career because, I've always said I will have arrived in life, not just in business, but in life, when Bob invites me to be a part of the Masters of Marketing. I'm not even joking. It was always my goal because I know that this event is your baby. The care, the love, the attention, the consideration that you put into this is unmatched and unparalleled. And so I had the opportunity to speak, and then I decided, you know what, with this event pivoting and moving online or virtual, how can I be of service? How can I help? So I don't know if you want to share or kick it off, and I can jump in and we can talk about.
You have all the details, but Jaffe and Liodice are going to collaborate, and we're essentially bringing the masters to Corona TV. So, Mr. Jaffe, you take it away and you steal the show.
Yeah, so that's why you are seeing yellow. Here's Carla saying, "Go Bob." I worked with him while on the board for the BMA. That's why you're seeing a whole color palette change. That's why you're seeing ANA logos on the top, and you're seeing these magnificent Aaron designed these beautiful banners. But what I'm going to be doing and it's the least I can do for the most part, is to sit down with some of this rock star, all-star group of CMOs. These are the 8 CMOs. There's still a few that we're waiting on. Let this be your incentive to join us. But I'm going to actually show you who I will be sitting down with and interviewing on Corona TV leading up to the Masters of Marketing. And, there is no one person that is, better or worse or different. They're all leaders. They're all absolutely inspirational. I think we do have to call out the father of Force for Good and Force for Growth, Mark Pritchard, P&G's global CMO. I'm sure his title might be slightly different, but I'm so happy to be sitting down with this group. And let's be honest, finding out if they're Star Trek fans, because that's the real thing, right? That's what people want to know.
I'm not sure about that, Joe, but you should go for it, do it. But I think what you're going to see, just as I've learned over the years, is that there are lessons to be learned from everybody. Nobody's got the perfect handle on marketing. Nobody's got the perfect handle on business development and that growth equation. And you're going to see person by person the unique experiences that they've had that shape their decision making and have led to their success and to their overall growth. So I'm sure you're going to have 8 fabulous interviews, and I hope a few more check the box along the way and join you for that. And thank you for doing so. I think it's a terrific segue going into Masters of Marketing Week.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Obviously, part of this partnership is that they will give us a sneak preview in terms of what they're going to be speaking on. Right. So we can, kind of get a little bit of an idea of what that content buffet, portfolio, smorgasbord looks like. But we'll also get to know them as people, and we'll get to know them about what they care about personally, professionally. It's up to them, because the rules of Corona TV are that whatever goes, whatever you feel comfortable with talking, this is just about keeping it real. I mean, I've used this analogy, Bob. Imagine, you could take this any way you want, but imagine the two of us were complete strangers and we were sitting next to each other on a plane on a long trip. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, being on a plane in general, but next to me. And now you're sitting next to this person and you're getting to know them, and hopefully not, wishing that you could move seats. But it's almost like this idea of you meet someone you've never met before, uncover, discover what you share in common, and what you can build on together, as opposed to what keeps you apart or separates you.
Let me build on that, Joe, because there's an important insight that I think is buried in the comment about what you have in common together. And it's the one area that I think we all need to learn, is that we are stronger if we work together. And one of the criticisms that I've had of the marketer community for many years was the inability to collaborate well enough to be able to advance the interests of the marketer community in particular. And over the past few years, we've created what we call the Global Growth Council, that a few of your guests are sitting on. And in that vein, we are learning how to work together as CMOs to be able to lead the industry, to be able to ensure that we collaborate and bring the best of our talents, the best of our insights, to create an agenda for the industry that we all can collectively pursue. And in that regard, I think that we are going to be better off, not only because we as individuals take these nuggets of insights and apply them to our own businesses, but our businesses can work together for the greater good.
Well said, and I think it's the perfect message to conclude with, because collaboration, selfless collaboration, the superpower of generosity is what will allow us all to, not just defeat a virus, but defeat mediocrity and defeat the unknown and defeat every force for stagnation and force for doubt. This is a force for growth. It is a force for good. It is a force for positivity. And it is a force for moving forward. You said it best when you spoke about navigation on bumpy and unstable ground. We have to figure out how we can find solid ground. It might be discovering a new world, but we can do it together. You see, everything comes back to Star Trek. I wanted to just play out with a couple of things, but before we do that, for people that are watching, we will start the interviews. I think Manos Spanos from Danone will be on next week, and I will actually, in fact, what I will do is I will share with you who next week's guests are. One of them is a CMO, or at least a CMO as part of this partnership, which is Manos on Thursday. But that certainly does not mean that you're not going to enjoy Eric, Michael Chong, and Len Herstein, who will be with us on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, taking a little bit of a break for the Jewish festival of, it's not much of a festival, but the Jewish day of Yom Kippur. But I'm going to just see if a few, Tom said, reject mediocrity, and good to see you, Bob. Bob, I'm going to give you the last word, and then I'm going to play out with a commercial. Yes, the guy who wrote Life After the 30-Second Spot is going to show you a television commercial that is just flipping awesome, and you're going to love it, Bob, if you haven't seen it already. I love it too. And then we're going to go over to the Zoom after show, Bob and I. So come and hang out with Bob and I. It's a Friday. Maybe get a drink if you need to. But Bob, final word for you. And then we'll play out with the commercial, and we'll play out with our music.
Well, the final word is pretty much a compilation of what I've been talking about, is that be ambitious, be courageous, and go places where you haven't gone before. Push the envelope and pursue being both a force for good and being a force for growth. Joe, I want to thank you so much for being here. I totally have enjoyed this time. Lots of good things to you.
And to you, my friend. And we're going to play out with a commercial. So here it goes.
Tonight, I'll be eating a veggie cheeseburger on ciabatta. No tomatoes.
Tonight, I'll be eating 4 cheese tortellini with extra tomatoes.
So it's come to this. Thank you.
Bravo.
Careful, Hamill. Daddy's not here to save you.
Oh, I am my daddy. Wait, what?
What are you talking about?
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.